It was raining. The wind sliced through the empty streets like a razor. And somewhere lost in the dead of night, someone screamed. Not a human scream, something deeper, more primal, something that didn't want to be heard, but couldn't hide anymore. London, city of eternal shadows. Beneath the dimmed lights and rain-soaked sidewalks, stories hide, the kind no one dares to tell. Stories that defy logic, corrode reason. And among them all, there is one that drifts through the centuries like a cursed whisper. The story of a man who stopped being a man and became a beast. This is the true case of the Werewolf of London. And it all began with fear. The first time the name appeared in an official report was in 1924, but the stories were far older. Long before newspapers, before modern science tried to explain the unexplainable, the residents of Hackney whispered among themselves about an ancient evil that walked beneath the moon. An evil that began with howls in the distance, followed by a strange scent in the air, a mix of wet earth, blood, and something no one could describe. The earliest mentions come from 19th century parish records. Locals reported in the heart of Victorian London, finding animals torn to shreds without any explanation. Horses dismembered, dogs ripped open like sacks of flesh. But it wasn't just that. A local priest, known only as Father G, wrote in his diary that for 5 consecutive nights of full moon, he heard inhuman growls coming from Epping Forest. He wrote, "It's as if hell itself were watching. Something wants out." At the time, it was dismissed as superstition. But then the disappearances began, and they never stopped. In 1889, a boy named Thomas Withers vanished on his way home from school. His coat was found in an alley covered in blood, but no bones, no clues. Police blamed street gangs, but something didn't add up. There were marks, deep scratches on the brick wall as if something with claws had gouged the stone. Months later, 2 vagrants were found dead in Highgate Cemetery, both with their chests ripped open, organs removed. Witnesses swore they saw a massive, hairy creature with glowing yellow eyes roaming the area that same night. Police dismissed the reports as mass hysteria, but the locals began locking their windows and nailing crosses to their doors. As the years passed, the case vanished from official records, but in taverns and churches and dark alleys, the story remained alive, whispered by drunken old men, terrified washerwomen, and children who swore they saw glowing eyes in the trees. Decades later, what was legend came back with force. In 1938, while London prepared for war, a group of soldiers reported being attacked during a night patrol near Hampstead Heath. They didn't see a normal enemy. They saw a creature, the size of 2 men with dark skin, eyes like embers, and teeth sharp as razors. 2 soldiers died. The army silenced everything. But their families knew something was wrong. The bodies were torn apart and missing pieces. In 1957, a new wave of sightings began, this time with more precision. In the Walthamstow area, a 67-year-old widow named Margaret Ellis claimed to witness a transformation. She said her tenant, a pale and quiet man named Edward Granger, would lock himself in the back room every full moon. And one night, she heard screams, then something scratching the floor. Then, silence. The next morning, Margaret found the door smashed open, the room soaked in blood, and paw prints, too large for any dog. Edward had vanished, never seen again. By this point, newspapers grew curious, but treated the story as oddities, urban legends. The word werewolf was a punchline. But for the locals, the fear was real. In 1963, a group of teenagers went camping in Epping Forest. Only 2 returned. The others were found days later, or rather what was left of them. One body was missing its head. Another had its skull crushed. But the strangest part was what one of the survivors said. It looked like a man, but it wasn't. Its eyes glowed in the dark, and its teeth were like a beast's. It didn't speak. It growled. Once again, police blamed an animal attack, but there were no dog bites, no bear tracks, no wolves. It was something else. In the 1970s, the cases all but stopped. Some say the monster died, others that it was taken. But in 1992, something reignited the fear. A retired police officer named Arthur Mallory published a book. In it, he revealed he was part of a secret British government investigation in the 1950s called Operation Silver Fang. According to Mallory, the government was aware of the attacks and had captured a living creature. an aberration that walked upright but had animal features, immense strength, and an uncontrollable hatred for mankind. He claimed the creature was kept in an underground facility for 6 years. And then it simply vanished. The documents were burned, the witnesses silenced. Mallory died 6 months after publication, of natural causes, but before that he gave an unaired interview. In it, he said a sentence that still echoes in the darkest corners of the internet. You think it was a werewolf, but it wasn't a curse. It was possession, something demonic. And this is where the pieces start to align. Because in recent years, new reports have begun to surface. More subtle, more modern, but with the same essence. Audio recordings of howls from no known animal. Night videos showing humanoid figures crossing forests. Distorted faces in the windows of old houses. And bodies, still today, found mutilated, without explanation. All in regions near the old grounds of Black Hollow Church. A place where, according to records from 1811, a secret ceremony was held. An invocation. The name written in the manuscripts is the same. Repeated in Latin, lupus demonium, the demon of flesh. The spirit of transformation, the beast that needs a human body to break free. And according to forgotten legends, once summoned, it doesn't go away. It only changes skin. The case of the Werewolf of London may sound like fiction, but the evidence didn't vanish. It was only hidden. And the question remains, is all of this just myth? Or is there something deeper, older, more cruel than any creature born from imagination? There is something disturbing about this case, something that goes beyond myth, legend, or medieval monsters. There is a presence, a pattern, a cycle that repeats itself, from the silence of the forest to the heart of London. And what once seemed like superstition has begun to leave clearer traces. Traces that modern curiosity, science, and technology can no longer ignore. The 2000s brought what centuries never had: cameras, recordings, digital testimonies. And it was precisely in 2008 that reports of the so-called Werewolf of London gained new strength and a new shape. It was a November night in 2008. In the region of Chingford, a group of young people was exploring the ruins of an old chapel destroyed in the 19th century. They were filming with their phones, looking for content for an urban legend channel. But what they found wasn't part of the script. The video, posted anonymously on YouTube, starts with laughter, jokes, and then silence. One of the teens points the camera toward the surrounding woods. There are eyes, 2 glowing dots, motionless in the heart of the darkness. Then, a sound, not a roar, something between a growl and a moan. The video cuts. The image returns, shaky, running, screams. One of the boys, sobbing, says, "That thing had a human shape, but walked like a beast." The group vanished from the internet. The video disappeared days later, but copies had already been saved and analyzed. Forensic experts tried to argue it was just an animal, maybe a wild dog or a large boar, but none of them have eyes that reflective, or movements that symmetrical. 2 years later, in 2010, an independent journalistic investigation reopened the case of retired officer Arthur Mallory. The team, led by a journalist named Benedict Walsh, gained partial access to documents through the Freedom of Information Act. Among them, records of an underground facility called the Hollow Section, located beneath the outskirts of East London. The documents referenced biological testing, but also, ambiguously, a volatile subject with non-human symptoms. Terms like hyper-resistance, nocturnal regeneration, and intermittent predatory behavior appeared in reports dated 1958. No names, no photos, only codes. But one detail stood out. The sessions were always conducted in the days leading up to the full moon, and every recorded disappearance near the facility occurred on those same dates. Benedict Walsh disappeared in 2011, just one day after publicly claiming he had obtained definitive proof, an audio recording from one of the containment sessions. His apartment was found ransacked, his phone destroyed, his hard drive wiped clean. The police called it a robbery followed by voluntary disappearance. But those close to him insist he was terrified. And in his last recorded call, he said they tried to lock it up, but it's still there. In the years that followed, reports became more fragmented, harder to trace, but still consistent. Then came the pandemic. The world stood still. London was empty, and it was in that silence that strange sounds returned. Among the residents near Epping Forest and Black Hollow, reports of long howls during cold dawns. Police were called to investigate alleged break-ins, always with no trace. Only broken doors and claw marks on stone walls, a pattern too precise to ignore. But something had changed. Witnesses began describing a creature less and less animal, and increasingly human. And this is where the theories emerge. Theories that divide public opinion into three main camps. The first, most popular among skeptics, is mass hysteria. They claim all the reports are the result of fear, cultural influence, and the power of suggestion. They say the image of the werewolf is embedded in Europe's collective unconscious, and that one strange sound is enough for the imagination to do the rest. But this theory fails in one critical area: the physical evidence. Claw marks in stone, mutilations with no clear cause, footprints that appear and vanish without any animal logic. The second theory digs deeper. It claims the creature, whatever it is the result of a failed military experiment, a Cold War attempt to create a genetically enhanced super soldier. The term Project Lupus appears in documents leaked by anonymous groups. Though never confirmed, the data aligns with Mallory's testimony and with the first disappearances. The third theory is the most feared, and perhaps the closest to the truth. It claims the werewolf of London isn't biological, it's spiritual. An entity that feeds on fear, blood, and living flesh, that manifests in vulnerable bodies, in broken souls, and turns men into husks, puppets of nameless fury, a demonic rage. And for those who believe, there's a far more terrifying pattern. Each new cycle of appearances begins after long periods of silence. And now, in 2025, that silence seems to be breaking again. In the last 3 months, 5 violent attacks were reported in the regions of Chingford, Hainault, and Loughton. Cases buried by the media, labeled as dog attacks, but with identical characteristics to those documented decades ago. Bodies torn apart, deep gashes in trees, hair ripped out by the roots. And one horrifying detail: all the attacks occurred on full moon nights. 3 of the victims before dying reported seeing a man with glowing eyes who growled like a beast. Now everything suggests the creature is back. But what does it want? Why does it always return to the same region? Why does it always leave incomplete, confused, symbolic traces? Some occult scholars claim the werewolf of London doesn't act on instinct, but on ritual. Each victim, each appearance, part of a cycle of blood and rebirth. And according to those same scholars, there's a hidden pattern behind the locations of the attacks. When connected on a map, they form an ancient symbol, a pagan rune, the rune of irreversible transformation. None of this has been officially confirmed, but some say the government knows, that it monitors, covers up, and waits. Waits for what? Perhaps control, perhaps fear, or perhaps because it cannot stop what was never human. The werewolf of London is, by all accounts, a real case of demonic transformation. Not a cursed man, not a victim of the moon, but a vessel, a host, something that manifests for a time, uses the body, and then vanishes until the next cycle. And maybe it never left, only adapted, hid in the city's shadows, behind common faces, forgotten names, empty eyes. Maybe it walks among us and waits for the next full moon, because when the scent of fear spreads, it can smell it. When silence falls, it listens, and when no one believes anymore, it returns.